trying to get back to the basics of great products.
Power comes from sharing information.
I try to convince people to slow down.
Free. Open.
This is the Soaked by Slush podcast.
This episode is sponsored by Business Finland, and this time we're promoting two things we really love, Finland and entrepreneurship. Business Finland has a very interesting service called Startup Kit, which is aimed at helping entrepreneurs interested in Finland with all the nitty-gritty stuff such as permits, moving to Finland, establishing a company, anything really. Finland has one of the highest rates of investment per capita in Europe and state support for startups to kickstart their success. Finland also has a transparent, equal opportunity and highly functional society with efficient public services and a good market for piloting and scaling your business. What's more, English is a common business language here, as you can hear. Finland can offer this and so much more for anyone interested in Finland. Check out businessfinland.com/startupkit. You can find the link in the description. And hey, if you end up moving here, let us know and we'll show you around. But now, let's go to the episode.
Hi listeners, welcome to this week's installment of Soaked by Slush podcast. My name is Isa Krautio, here's William von der Palen. We're coming to you, not live, pre-recorded from Helsinki, Finland.
This was once live, but not anymore.
Yes, this time it's not. It would be cool to try this out live sometimes.
Yeah.
That's a thought we'll save for later. In this week's episode, we have Sami Marttinen from Swappie. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, you're looking very stylish today, I must say, before we start out. Very nice. And do you want to give a short introduction of yourself? Who are you?
Sure thing. Entrepreneur, one of the two founders, CEO at Swappie. Prior to founding the company, I've basically been an entrepreneur since I was little. So when I was 15, I was founding a company with my father, construction business. Was running that with him for 10 years. Prior to that, I did other things like, for instance, asking my mom to take jobs for me when I was underage, so I could start working sooner. And yeah, done plenty of stuff. Also doing my studies at Aalto University School of Business.
How much of an outlier were you asking your mom to get you jobs in opposed to being in reverse? What do you think in your close circles? Very much so. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Don't know any other people from my closer circles who did it.
That's interesting.
And then quite recently, 4 or 5 years ago or so, you founded Swappie. Could you maybe give a short introduction to the listeners what you're all about?
Sure. So what Swappie does, we buy, completely refurbish and sell iPhones.
Yeah. It's always a good business idea if you can, it takes 10 seconds to explain to people what you do.
Yeah, that's really good.
Sometimes you hear these like 3 minutes we do this and then we have this business model, but you buy phones, used phones and sell them to people.
Sell them
simple.
like functioning like new.
Yeah, with the guarantee, right?
Exactly. That's the core thing. Like it's very different to sell used phones than selling refurbished, like completely refurbished ones. And that's what we noticed also in the early days when we started the company, was that it started based on my own experience of getting scammed on a C2C marketplace, right? So then on the next day we went out on the street with the other company founder Jiri, and just started asking people like how big of a problem is this. But then we actually realized that there's a much larger issue in what comes to buying phones in general, that there are some like really similar trends that existed in the 1980s, 1990s in the used car market. So back in the days, it used to be a market where 10% of the cars were bought as used or fixed. And these days it's a 50-50 ratio in the States, for instance. And some reasons behind it are for instance, like rising prices of the devices, and then slower technological progress, like saturation of the technology in a way.
Yeah, right, because smartphones haven't existed that long yet, so it's something that's lagging behind a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it arose from something. It's quite typical, isn't it, that you get scammed or you have a bad experience, but then quite a few, or not many people, actually then take action and do something about it. But so you asked people and you realized it, and did you found the company pretty much right away, or how did that happen?
We were actually running a business. Like we had been running a few businesses actually prior to Swappie, so one could call us serial entrepreneurs. And so it was really obvious when we found this problem, once we noticed like how big of a problem it is, like actually what comes to buying phones in general, so that actually most people would be ready to shift towards buying refurbished or used ones, right? If they just knew that the phones were actually functioning like new devices. So then you would have cheaper prices, the same warranties, and the same benefits of buying a new device. So that was something bigger that we were thinking about. So we went on it, on exploring it right away. And I would say around half a year and a lot of trials later, we decided to put full focus into it and leave everything else behind.
I guess I have one more question about the smartphones themselves before we get into the nitty-gritty of the company. Like how close to a new phone can you get by refurbishing it?
Actually, really close, or even better, like in many ways. If you think about, for example, in manufacture, some phones that are manufactured, defected in the manufacturing process in a way that, for example, audio IC faults or some motherboard level issues that come in the manufacturing. Once you fix those, we have developed a lab where we can actually make those stronger than the original ones. So once we rebuild the data lines, the same faults will basically never come back again.
Wow, that's great. It's gone pretty well with Swappie recently. I think we have written down here. You in 1 year you grew 273%, and I guess do you want to just start running through the story of how did you achieve the growth you have noticed in I guess quite a few years. It hasn't been that many years when Swappie has been operational.
No, basically we started in late 2016, and in 2017, around midway through the year, we decided to go all into this, and now it's been just 3 years since then.
Wow.
Yeah, and your revenue last year was already, maybe to give some background also to the listeners, you can grow 300%, but it can be from 100,000, right. And but your revenue is already plus 30 million, right, from last year?
Yes, exactly. So basically, if we think about kind of just the past 2 years, in January 2018, we were just 4 people in the company. Now we're over 300. And same thing revenue-wise, we've basically grown from 0 to 31 million in the first 3 years.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. What do you think are some of the biggest enablers of that growth? What's gone right for you?
I would say right from starting the company, being obsessed about customers, being obsessed about the customer experience and what we're actually building. And that's something that's in the DNA of us as founders, everything we've done in the past. But definitely the number one thing has been finding the right people. Everything starts from the people, and that's how I see it, that it's in the particular order that when you need to have the right people, then the right strategy. Once you have the right people, you can create that, right? And then comes execution and cash.
Yeah.
But in that order, I would say that's where we have been the most successful.
And that's something you quite often hear, that you should get the right people, but quite often it's left at that also, that, okay, it's easy to say to get the right people, but how do you actually, what are some of the factors around that to actually get to hire or even find the right people?
That's a really tough one. Before you go into hiring anyone, you need to at some level know what you are hiring for. So that's where based on discussions with other growth companies and other startups, where a lot of firms go south. that you don't really know well enough what kind of traits, what kind of competencies you should be looking for. And it changes over time. That's really natural. Like when you are a 4 people startup, you need to hire kind of like more generalist kind of people who can do everything from supply to demand to, like, for instance, myself handling everything from accounting, finance, supply, then actually doing the testing of the phones myself, bringing those to customers with a bus or with a bike during the first weeks, and purchasing those from like people's homes, because we had no cash to we had no cash or no funding to run the business at scale in the really first days. So you need to have really flexible pool of people as your first hires, especially if you're going on a shoestring budget. And then once you grow, the further you grow, the more structure you need, and the more kind of like T-shaped people and more specialist kind of roles. And that's what you need to be extremely good at. You need to know where your company is heading. Otherwise, you're going to make a lot of mistakes there. And that will be seen in the culture and everything you do.
At what point did you start identifying growth factors in the company, and what were they?
Definitely like growth was and has been one of the key focus areas as well. Without that, you will have nothing. Like you need to grow extremely fast, especially if you're running a startup and you are living on funding. So when you have only a few months of runway left, you need to grow. Otherwise, you won't get the next funding round and you'll die. So basically, that has been one of the key focus areas since day one. And I would say, like as I said in the beginning, being obsessed about customers is definitely that. So you need to be in really close connection with your target group. When finding the product market fit, you need to gather data from the field all the time. When you're going from 0 to 1, it's much more like you won't have the numbers, so you need to gather qualitative data, and then the data from public sources and other sources that are available. But when you're creating a new market, as we have been doing, and changing customer behavior in this space, it hasn't been so easy, especially in the early days. We didn't have a lot of public data available in the market, so then we needed to make assumptions on the interviews and everything with smaller sample sizes.
Yeah, that's something that we actually wanted to touch upon a bit, is the category creation thing, that it's very often said that it's maybe not the best thing to be the first mover because you make all the mistakes, and now you're creating a kind of a new market. You have had the used phone markets, but you talk about the refurbished phones. So do you see a threat here that someone will, just, copy you and put more money into it and run by you? Or do you think the market is big enough for many players? Or how do you even approach this dilemma? Because it's something that hasn't existed before, as you said.
Yeah, it's definitely big enough for many players, and in a way, it's an execution game, and that's what I like about it. Like frankly said, like once you have the best capabilities, best talent in your team, you shouldn't be too worried about that. Like there's not much we can patent here, so you cannot be too worried about the competition. You cannot be of course, you cannot be arrogant. Like in a way, paranoid optimist is a good word when or a good phrase when thinking about it. Like you need to keep your eyes open for any threats in the market, anything that might be out there, and always look out for the kind of like better, more innovative services in the market than other companies out there, but we cannot really worry about it too much. And when we are at front runner and growing as fast as we are, like at the moment 3 to 4x still year over year, still kind of like from these numbers, it's gonna take a few years for anyone to catch us in a way. And the market is also big enough for multiple players, so.
If you that growth, so you're gonna be able maybe to sustain that kind of growth rate even still. You just raised some new funding, quite a big round, so you should have the cash. But maybe looking into the more specific ways of growing is probably something that's very interesting for many people running their own companies online. You're an online business basically purely. What are some of the strategies you have used to achieve, more specifically, like to actually, where do you acquire users and how do you think about that kind of things?
Sure. So, yeah, once you're growing from 0 to 1, it's really simple. Like back in the days, it was just you just try out some marketing. You can even I like some of the examples of how Airbnb started, for instance, back in the days, and how they kind of hacked Craigslist in a way, just put their advertisements out there. Once you're going at basically at the shoestring budget with no funding, we did a lot of similar things back in the days when acquiring the first users, and then listened to all the feedbacks from them so we could improve the service as fast as possible. Now once we have found the product market fit, now it's more about we need to constantly think to what markets we need to go and how fast we need to grow there, how fast we need to find the product market fit. You need to plan a lot in advance, and not just a few months, but much longer cycles, because you need to also have the right hires in at the right time, and all the Gantt charts and everything else ready. So it's very different. What comes to marketing and user acquisition, that's done mostly online.
Use social media mostly, or do you also mostly online, so not that much of these bigger brand awareness things that it's more tactical, more measurable? You put €1 in, you get hopefully more than €1 out.
Well, there is the brand awareness factor as well, that you cannot create a category without being really good at that. So, but that can be done online. That can be done through radio, TV, of course, outdoor display ads and everything else. But that can be done online as well, through Facebook, YouTube, you name it. So.
And also through good podcasts, I hear.
I think so, yeah, hopefully.
That's a great point.
The Airbnb thing was interesting. Can you talk a bit more about sort of stories or benchmarks you had from before, who you looked up to, or what examples you used to sort of assist you in this path?
Multiple of those. I would say the best person to really talk about the really nitty-gritty stuff what comes to growth hacking would be the other company founder, Jiri, who's done most of this in the early days.
He's also welcome to show up here at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's just one example. We've done a lot of that, and it's not just benchmarking to other companies, but it's just always when you have a problem, we have this habit of not just looking at how other people do it, but also think outside the box. What possible ways do we have to reaching any given goal that we have? And it's the same. It applies to everything that we have done, from the Airbnb example to, for example, when we opened our first. We actually have a physical store as well in Helsinki, and it's kind of a legacy thing. It's really good, customer service trait in a way in this market and in this city, and a great way to gather customer feedback. But also in the early days, the first warehouse was basically at my home, and then the classic basement story in the really early days. But when we hired our first employees, we actually needed an office, so we thought why not try a store at the same time, and how does that work in this business, and how much faster we could build trust around our brand and gather customer feedback.
Yeah. Do you see that there's some benefit to sort of imprinting yourself into reality in some sense by having your image on the street and having that human to human connection?
I would say, especially in the early days, once you were so small, it's really hard to gather even qualitative feedback just by purely calling, and it's you get to much closer and deeper level when people actually visit your store and just hang out for a while, and you can gather much deeper feedback in a way. But yeah, some examples from there were that we couldn't find a constructor to build a wall there, simple, start of things, because the floor was how much is it, like 15 meters high, so you couldn't build proper support there. So then over the next weekend, I was looking at videos on YouTube how to build a wall, and just googling it. And after the weekend, it was done. And on the next weekend, I built a desk there with the same. I couldn't find anything on Google, but then I just drew it on the paper and went to buy all the supplies. And because you couldn't find anything that fits there, and that's, I would say, describes the mentality that we've had.
Yeah, I think that can do attitude is probably something that's pretty good to have for any entrepreneur. But it seems like many people founding companies have that illusion that you can be really big right away, or you can do anything online. It's very easy, just press the button. But then, for instance, Reid Hoffman talks about this. Which was true also for Airbnb, was these first 500 fans, and that you get the first people or 100 fans in that really love your product and talk about it to everyone, and how you should acquire them manually, and you can't expect just to start running cold ads and people will fly in. Sure, some companies probably have maybe made that happen, but for most people it's probably about that attitude that you talked about.
Yeah, and you need to do things that don't scale in the beginning as well.
Yeah. What about venture capital and the role of venture capitalists in your growth? Obviously, you've needed cash to grow that fast, but what kind of other upsides or downsides has there been to working with VCs? We will hope that your VCs don't listen to this episode, so you can talk freely.
Yeah, I can definitely talk freely here. In 2015, actually, when we founded the company, we just left our consulting summer jobs and for instance, for myself, my job at the bank, and then all the voluntary duties that I had besides school. And for Jiri, it was his job at the marketing agency, just for an idea. And we didn't raise any capital in the beginning. So actually for the first half a year, we went with our own savings. We just wanted to learn and try out a lot of things. We really had passion for this. And then it came a bit kind of out of a sudden. We had already tried multiple different business concepts, and then we met Ville Westerinen, who was back then an investor at Reactor Ventures, and then we were just borrowing some ideas. We hadn't really found it what we want to do yet, but they liked our approach of kind of the Y Combinator style, mentality of failing fast, build, measure, learn, and fail fast and quick iteration cycles, and what we were doing kind of even with the business concepts and that level. So they just basically threw out the question, what would you do if we gave you 55K, and how much faster could you test and try out things? So we actually did that in 2015. But then with that 55K, we went on for the next 2 years. And so it wasn't really it wasn't our primary goal to raise venture capital. So we then survived so long just on the student loans and savings, and we wanted to spend the VC money into trying things as quickly as you can. And once we have founded it, and once we had bootstrapped Swappie to, how much was it, 200K net revenue per month, that was when we raised our first actual proper round in 2018 January. So yeah, it has been a lot of downs in that first 2 years as well, I would say, living on a shoestring budget and on noodles.
Hopefully not anymore. Yeah. How is the as an entrepreneur, how has your sort of how has the company culture changed? But yeah, how has running the company changed after this, sort of practically the day to day? And I'm not trying to press too much, get into the negatives of the thing, but are there any compromises even that you've had to make, or has it been mostly positive?
I would say mostly positive. Of course, the role, I would say the biggest change, as he also asked, phrased in the question in a way, has been the change of the role. So in the really early days, when you had under 50 people, the role was very, very operational and just on when we grew from 4 people to 50 people, that happened in the first half a year after raising the first funding round. And like when you look at those numbers, like in the first year after raising like a seed round, growing from 4 people to 60 people, and then over the next year growing to 200, you need to adapt really quickly. And I would say one of the most important traits, or one of the toughest challenges also in a way, has been that you need to you cannot have too much ego in the game, and you need to constantly hire people who are smarter than you. But that also means like giving away some of the things you are actually good at, because you just find smarter people who are much better than you. So that has been, of course, I would say like probably for us as founders, but also for a lot of early employees also, it's not always easy, but that's something you have to do. And then you just need to learn into your new roles, because it changes all the time.
And you're already present in quite many international markets as well. Maybe if we touch upon that a bit, how do you determine markets, and what have been some of the has it been easy to internationalize, or has there been some challenges along the way?
When we started the firm, we knew that like Finland is such a small market, even in this space, that we need to go abroad basically immediately. So that's how we started. So to Sweden, we went to Sweden mainly because it's one of the easiest markets in a way to enter from Finland. We have a lot of Swedish speakers here and so on. But then after that, we made this kind of like expansion research all over Europe. So we were looking at the kind of like G&I metrics and everything and everything else, like data on the market, like which markets are the most appealing in this space, and the hypothesis on that. But then actually we didn't enter the number 1 market on the list. We went to one of the toughest markets instead, even after doing the research, and we decided to go to Italy, because we knew that like if you want to be a number 1 player in the world in this business, in this space, you need to enter some tougher markets first, and not necessarily the easiest or the most appealing ones. So we knew that even if we would fail, we would learn so much faster in one of the toughest e-commerce markets than we would do anywhere else. So that was the number 1 reason in the early days. But after that, when we noticed that this kind of like the playbook that we built around it works anywhere, when you just adapt kind of like the right things in the market big model, and in the kind of like in the early stages of any market, in the research stage.
You already kind of answered what would have been my next question. I think I met you at last year at Slush. We had a short chat about this. It was very interesting. I talked to you about this internationalization, and I think I asked you, what are some of the differences between the specific countries, and what do you sort of look for? What are the preconditions and the projections before you go in? And you mentioned Italy then, but now you said you had a playbook. So how much of sort of this expansion goes according to that playbook, and what are some of the things, or have been some of the things that you've been looking for that have been different in various countries?
Yeah, I would say like some of the biggest learnings have been like, for instance, when we went to Sweden, we thought that we would open a physical store there. But then actually we noticed that the real estate market in Stockholm is a lot harder than it is in Helsinki. So then we had to find other ways of building the trust there. So we actually changed the playbook. So that has happened a lot along the way. A lot of failings, a lot of learnings. And for Italy, for instance, one of the things you need to look at as an e-commerce player or as a marketplace is payments, for instance. So we noticed that cash on delivery is one of the key payment methods in the market, and that caused a lot of headaches there in the early days. But then we found a way around it, and some other like really nitty gritty things, like for instance, like when localizing your checkout in some markets, you just realize that in Italy people just don't trust certain certain payment providers, or they have hard, like it's a lot harder to build the trust into anything. So you just need to validate everything in the market, no matter what research you have prior to entering. So you need to be really closely test everything in your site and everything you do when localizing the service, especially in the tougher markets.
Do you have like certain things you always do? Since you're an online store, so do you need to hire locally right away? Do you hire before you open? Do you test ads, from your office in Finland? You start running some test ads in Italy and see if there is the kind of interest you see, or how do you go about that?
Typically we do open hires around at the same time when we start testing a market. But typically we already, before we hire someone, we already know whether the country works or not. So we can run that from here.
Yeah, that's one of the advantages maybe then of being online. You can test quite cheaply, basically anywhere in the world, from just sitting at the office. So
exactly. And we do have the advantage of having 37 nationalities here at our office in Finland. So we've hired people from all over the world. We've had a lot of people moving here just for Swappie.
That's cool.
That's great. Yeah.
When talking about online stores, you always hear that you should optimize, less churn, and you should make a secure checkout, and you should have, lots of stuff should go on. But what are some of the biggest things you've learned about creating, a working and trusted internet brand that actually works?
Well, I'd say the most important thing for us has been not as much optimizing the e-commerce or the site. I'd say the biggest learning has been how to actually optimize and localize the service in the early days before you even build anything. So that has been more of our approach. Like, first actually figure out what your customers need in any given market before you build and start building on your earlier hypotheses. And that's how you in the end then also build a functional site that actually serves the customer's needs. So a bit of a different approach in a way.
Yeah, I think that's refreshing also in a way that, again, if you don't talk to someone, or you don't have a good customer experience, but you have a great site, but the product is not what the customer wants, it doesn't really matter if the site is good or not. No one will still buy it. So,
how do you see sort of Swappie as a bigger picture in the smartphone market in general? Like, do you see it changing the way the smartphone market works at large, even globally? That's big. That's a big question.
This is a really big one.
Yeah.
We are definitely doing that already in all of the markets where we are. So we grew into being the largest player in the refurbished and used smartphone market in Finland during our first year, and just the two of us, the two founders, and our first 2 employees. So we actually achieved that quite quickly in any of the markets we enter. And we have grown the market, the refurbished and smartphone market. In every market we have in Finland and Sweden multiplied the market size. So yes, we are changing the behavior, and most of our customers are actually the ones who are buying used or refurbished for the first time ever. So it is huge. If we continue to grow at scale, we will be changing the entire, like, the way people consume smartphones, or the way in the longer term the way people buy electronics and how they see that. So we are bringing refurbished mainstream.
Yeah, it's kind of a good segue for the maybe last question that we'll probably be asking a lot of the entrepreneurs who come on the show. But what's kind of there's this BHAG, so you have like big, hairy, audacious goal. So what's kind of like, the goal for Swappie, if you could choose anything? Where are you kind of going with the company?
would say we are looking to be, and I think we have a really good shot at being the number one player in the refurbished electronics field.
I noticed you said electronics and not just iPhones, so it's even more hairy and audacious than it is right now.
Yeah, I would say like the smartphone focus, it's really key for us, and especially and around the smartphone segment, iPhone focus at the moment. But nobody knows where the market is heading in the longer term. The demand might switch from iPhones to elsewhere, and for us, one of the key success factors also has been that we have built the like R&D department, so we can crack kind of like the issues and faults of any device you manufacture. We could even manufacture smartphones of our own with the people we have in the company. So once you have those capabilities, you can really you can march to any fields or any categories you want. So there again, we are listening to the customers and where the market is heading. So that's why I'm talking about refurbished electronics at the moment. Smartphones and within smartphone category, iPhones are the biggest segment. So
yeah, you kind of have a good brand also for that. You're not called refurbishediPhones.com. So exactly. That gives you some leeway also for the future. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Thank
the
you
show.
so much, Sami. Yeah,
it's been a pleasure.
Great pleasure.
Thank you.
And to everyone watching or listening, remember to subscribe for more episodes. There will be one equally great episode every week. So do subscribe and comment and stuff like that.
See you later.
Bye.